the smiles. You can see them through the masks. Utter and complete domination. In a year we will never forget. The Seattle Storm are the team we will always remember. They are your 2020 WNBA champions.
This is Nothing But That Sports Talk. And welcome to Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Camille from W Slam. Thank you for finally being able to make an appearance on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I know it's been some crazy times, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, we met at the JDI Classic, the one where Haran and Overtime Trey, well, he's not Overtime Trey anymore, took him the crown, of course. At least you got to see some of the action when it was a very entertaining basketball event.
Yeah, really fun stuff. I mean, there's nothing like summer hoops in New York, whether it's at Nike, at Rutger, at Dykeman, wherever it may be. I mean, there's nothing like it. So while we missed out on it this year, I was really glad to have that experience to do it last year and enjoy it the past couple of years. Hopefully we'll be back soon, if not next summer, the following, but we got to get back to it at some point.
Yeah, somebody that covered the Rutger and Dykeman Park games and interviewed your friends Christina and Ari, I would love for it to come back as well.
Yeah.
But on to our topic. It's been over a month since Seattle weathered the storm in the bubble. What are your impressions about that and the bubble in general?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was much of a surprise by the end of the season that Seattle came out on top. I mean, one, that's the 2018 championship roster team. They came in as a favorite. They had the most, I would say, cohesiveness and playing together experience of any team in the WNBA this season. So big congratulations to them. I think the biggest star of all that, is Breanna Stewart and how incredibly she played for having torn her ACL about 18 months prior to the season. So really great recovery, and for her to come back and almost average the same amount that she averaged her MVP season is pretty incredible. Win another finals MVP, win another ring. Nothing but great things for Seattle. That roster is not changing much. They still have the great core in Jewel Lloyd, Breanna Stewart, Sue Bird, Mercedes Russell, Jordan Canada, one of my favorite guards who's coming off the bench. They have a very good future in Seattle, and I'm very excited for them. In terms of the bubble or the wubble, what an exciting year for the WNBA to put together, I would say, one of the best plans of action to be able to play during COVID along with the NBA. They put together an event that I would say not many could do, in getting 144 players to safely play basketball throughout the season. And that's just something that now, as we look at other sports struggling to make it through from a safety standpoint and COVID standpoint, you really have to give salute to the people of the WNBA, the people of the NBA who have been able to pull this off. One of the better parts and one of the most, I would say, impactful parts of this past season was just how dedicated the league was to social justice and making sure that their voices were heard in moments of civil unrest for, very real, very, very real reasons. When you see what happened to Jacob Blake and you saw the response from the players on the court to protest that day, and not only that, but have plans of action afterwards, and speaking to Breonna Taylor's mother and having plans of action rather than just using the platform, I think was the most uplifting and most powerful moment of what they did in the WNBA. And so I'm really excited we got to see all of that this past season. What I love the most is that in the Women's Summit this past week, Kathy Engelbert said, this is not a one and done. This is the fabric of what the WNBA is going to be moving forward. And that just really shows you how on top and at the front of the social justice battle they are, in terms of leading the way and showing players around the world, athletes around the world, how just they can use their platforms to make an impact within their local governments.
Yeah, I was going to ask you something related to everything you just said, but you pretty much well ahead of me.
There's many levels to it, man. You gotta give the hats off to Seattle Storm, but then the players, it's just everything. It was an incredible year.
Yeah, but obviously one of my favorite moments of the Seattle Storm, obviously the game winner by Jewel Lloyd during the regular season game against the Los Angeles Sparks, the game winner by Elijah Clark, the game one against the Minnesota Lynx, and to start off the finals, Breanna Stewart almost surpassed Angel McCoughtry for the most points in the WNBA Finals game. And how can you forget the Bird herself, Sue Bird's assist? What would you mind seeing all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even shocking to me. It's just the level of greatness that they play with. They never are, I would say, complacent in the level of play that they have. And so they stay leveling each other up. So when you see Breanna Stewart drop 37 in a game, or was it 37 or 39? I can't remember. You know, it's 37. Not 37. Okay. You know, it's not even shocking. It's just how she plays. And, you know, the same with Sue. Sue just turned 40, and it was 2 weeks prior to turning 40 that she dropped 17 assists, I believe, in a game. It's just one of those things where you want to be shocked, but it's almost not shocking because they're, you know, how great that they are. Jewel Lloyd was meant for game winners. So was Elijah Clark. They just stay so calm and steady. And when I interviewed Sue for her Slam cover, that is actually something that her teammates talked about her. You know, no one freaks out until Sue's freaking out. And then when Sue is just always calm, steady, and consistent with the energy she brings to the game. And that really just brings her teammates to that same level. And that's just why, while it's incredible to see what they're doing and everyone is shocked, I'm not shocked. It's just how they play.
Yeah, and funny enough that it's the same Seattle Storm that Sabrina Ionescu made her WNBA debut against, and well, just like the finals, clean them up. That's all I'm going to say. But let's rank Sue Bird's championship wins from number 4 to number 1.
Okay.
Like, what is your fourth best championship for Sue Bird in her career?
I think for her, when I spoke to her about what championships mean the most, mind you, this was prior to the fourth, I know she mentioned 2018 being the most memorable for her, that being a year that they were only 2 years away from, or they had just rebuilt, 2 years prior. So for her, she thought her championship winning days were over at that point in 2016. And so you get to 2018 and you have what is likely one of the best rosters in the league. You know, it means so much more that late in your career that you're still playing at a high level with high intensity to still be able to win a championship. So when you go into ranking the years that mean most, I know for her that year is really high up there. You go all the way back to 2004 and Lauren Jackson and that whole team that she had. And number 1 always feels great, but you know, the latest one I'm sure feels even better. And number 4 to still be winning championships, you know, a week or two before turning 40. There's really no one in the world is doing anything like that. And so breaking it down wise, you can't pick one over the other. I can't pick one over the other. They all mean equally as much, but the last one was pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, because I was going to say that I rank her championship win in 2018 as number 4. Number 3, I would have to rank her. I would have to give it to her most recent championship win, just because of the circumstances that you win it. You won it. You did it in the bubble in the 22-game season. No fans allowed, and you continue to add on to a legacy. Not to mention, you did it the same year LeBron James won his 4th championship. And I already talked about how great LeBron's championship win was in an episode where I interviewed my cousin, so you can check it out when you get the chance. And obviously, number 2, I had to pick her championship win in 04, because I feel like that was the only series where the Seattle Storm had the competitiveness, because they were down 1-0 in that series to get to Connecticut Sun. But they flipped the script with the roster they've had. And even though Sue Bird didn't really do all that much because she only had 6 assists in game 3, I feel like that's where this series is more competitive. And her number 1 championship win, I have to give it to the one she got in 2010. Because even though it was a sweep, at least the games was more competitive.
Yeah.
Compared to the ones.
Totally understand. Yeah. When you talk about 2018, though, you can't discount the Western Conference Finals, which that crazy 5-game series between Diana and Sue.
I talked about it with Dari. Talked about it in the interview. I already went over it with Dari. That was a crazy series, especially Diana Taurasi showed you why she's the white mamba.
Yep. I mean, it is ice in her veins. And I think I can speak for a lot of the people in the women's basketball community when I say I'm ready to see a championship game, or at least a big time game between the Seattle Storm at full force and the Washington Mystics at full force, because in that year they were out some of their major players with injuries. So I do think, you know, that matchup with everyone healthy, it's just going to be scary, especially with the Mystics now having added Tina Charles, one of the best scorers of all time.
Yeah, the Mystics are going to be a problem next year because they have Ariel Powers, not just a diehard WNBA player or the champion, but also a true gamer. You have Natasha Cloud. You're going to have Tina Charles next season. Washington Mystics, they're going to come back strong.
Yep.
Unlike the team that lost at the buzzer against Shea Petty. I already talked about that with Erica Ayala in an earlier episode. Another person that covered the WNBA Finals in 2019. Yeah, we'll get to later in the conversation, but like Super Championship is just endless. But to get to like the most trickiest question that I meant to ask, who would win the one-on-one game, Sue Bird or LeBron James?
Oh, you can't put that. There's two different games, two different.
I mean, why not? I mean, they're both the GOAT in their own respective leagues. Like,
no, exactly. But when you talk about how the W plays versus the NBA, it's two different, you know, styles of play. If you're talking about perimeter shooting and you're talking about, you know, tricky, because Sue Bird isn't necessarily a scorer. That's not her game. Her game is assisting and being the real vision on the court for the team. LeBron is a pure scorer. He's a scorer first. I will say, I have been really impressed by how much he's transitioned into a point guard more so in terms of seeing the court, setting up plays and helping Anthony Davis, Rajon Rondo, other guys on the team get their moments and their buckets. But I do think they're almost two different players where I don't know from a 1v1, standpoint what we'll see. I got to stick with my girl Sue Bird. I can't not say no to Sue Bird, but two different styles of play. It'd be an interesting one-on-one for sure.
Yeah, you can stick to Sue Bird, but just remember, it's LeBron James.
That is very true.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd ask that question since they both won their 4 championships in the same year, and you had the NBA Finals and the WNBA Finals happening around the same time. But you, as a basketball fan and a basketball journalist, like, which finals do you think stand out the most between the NBA and the WNBA Finals?
Yeah, I think they're each unique in their own right. What I loved so much about this year is that it took away the narrative of you can't have seasons that run concurrently. That's always been a narrative around the WNBA of, oh, well, you don't want it competing with the NBA product. I almost think it elevated the WNBA product because now you have two different styles of basketball playing at the same time. You have NBA guys that are relevant and in the conversation talking about the WNBA as well. Not that that is needed for it to be great, but I think it took away that narrative that these two leagues can't run at the same time. That is something that is, I feel like we can point to this moment in time and say that's no longer an argument you can make. Now, when you talk about the finals specifically, there was a lot, I would say, from a story perspective in the NBA finals that was really exciting to see between a Heat team that no one expected or wanted or was going to see in the finals that has two rookies as their leading scorers in Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. I mean, Jimmy Butler is always going to do what Jimmy Butler does. That's not a surprise to anyone. I think a lot of people got their eyes open for how great he is. I will say, I knew because of my really good friend Meredith Mancow. She kept me honest. Listen, I get it. Jimmy Butler's the best player in the world. She said that multiple times. She brought that video back. Shout out Meredith. But there's really interesting storylines on that front. In Seattle, you know, it was hard to see Asia Wilson go through, I would say, it is her best season in the league and MVP championship year, and not necessarily level up to that. I just don't know if she necessarily had the help, especially losing De'Arica Hamby prior to the finals. and not having Elizabeth or Liz Cambage there as well playing. So from that standpoint, I knew going into it after they won to Connecticut, it wasn't going to be necessarily as even of a matchup as we had hoped if De'Erica was playing. No one really knew about that injury until close to the finals. So I think they're each unique in their own right. I loved watching what the Storm did a little bit more from a story perspective because, I mean, it's Sue Bird winning her fourth. It's Asia Wilson playing in her first finals. And these are players that, you know, have been working their careers for this. So I got to go with the Storm Aces.
Yeah, I'm not surprised right there because I know you love the W so much and what it brings to the table, not just in social justice, but it brings a culture. And you know what? Next season is going to be season number 25. I know we can, and somebody that just finished covering a whole season of WNBA basketball when they was in the Wubble, interviewing them through Zoom, which is where it's televised right now. But yeah, it's just so like I could go on and on about how crazy it is, but it's just there's nothing much you could say.
Not much else to say. Yep. Yeah,
I saw you on WNBA Twitter Live. Like, what is that like for you?
That was really fun. It was my first experience doing anything like that. It really was fun and debating. I was the Asia Wilson stands, which, by the way, I'm one of them myself. Oh, they came at me when I chose Stewie for MVP. And I think the big thing with that was there was such a good conversation around, it was a real MVP battle this year, as opposed to prior years where sometimes it kind of stands out who the MVP and whatnot. So it was fun. I love LaChina. I love Monica. It was just such a fun experience. My first live broadcast. So I hope we get to do more of those. It was such a fun time and a great experience.
Yeah, and I hope next season Monica even invites me to be on her WNBA Twitter Live next season because, come on now, I talk basketball with her. She has a basketball mind for somebody that can't win the NCAA tournament championship. Mm-hmm. But yeah, but this is so nice having you on the show. I must say, Camille, I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Appreciate what you're doing for the W Slam, including All Eyes on Me, especially last year focusing on an up-and-coming UConn product page, Buckets. I've seen some of the videos that you did. I've seen her highlights. Like, what went through your mind watching her at first compared to right now?
So it was actually a pretty crazy experience. I work really closely with one of our main editors, for video editors and filmers at Slam, Christian Casada, and he had gone to Minnesota. We did we just did a day in the life shoot with a cover story, or with a magazine write-up, and he came back from that trip. I actually wasn't on that trip, but he came back, and I had met Paige briefly. We had not, had I hadn't spent a lot of time, but he came back from that trip and he just goes, Camille, like, mind you, he came back to me and he's shot everyone from, he's shot Jimmy Butler, he shot all the Miami Heat, he's shot with, any major top NBA product, high school product. And he came back from that trip and he came back and said, Camille, she's the best player I've ever seen. And he said, let's put her on a cover. Like, that was, I want that to be on the record. It was Christian. He came to me, he said, we got to do this. She is, when you talk about someone that has the aura of greatness, you can't really speak it. It's almost, you just see it and feel it. And he came back and he said, I've never met a better player in my entire life. Like, from what she does on the court to her, her mentality, her attitude, the way she approaches the game. He had no words for it. And so, we right then and there said, let's make moves. And thank God, we got the chance to really spend some time with her during the All Eyes on Us series in the winter on her cover shoot in December. So basically from December to March, we were with her right up until COVID and coronavirus. So, man, I don't know what else to say other than UConn fans should just be really excited, because not only is she an incredible basketball player, which if you watch her highlights, that is just a known fact. She has such a mentality and she's so humble that she approaches the game as hungry as anyone does. There could be someone that is not, she approaches the game as if she doesn't have the talents that she does, and is so hungry and always wanting to learn more and always trying to get better. And what else could you want in a basketball player, And so really incredible human being as well. I really am grateful for the opportunity that her and her family gave us to kind of open their doors to us and be with them during the spring. It was gut-wrenching to be in the locker room when they found out that their state championship was canceled due to coronavirus. And
I just watched an episode about that. I was like, wow. I was at least hoping that they played the state championship because it was like literally one game left in that season, but they didn't. But Paige Buckets already got a ring, so
yeah, she got her ring. She did it, so at least she can
not to mention they've only like 120-8. That's all you need to hear. For those of you that don't know much about overtime in high school, 120-8, which is way better than any high school you could ever think of. Whether it's my high school, which is Canarsie Educational Campus, and what high school you went to,
I went to Lyman High School. Shout out to Longwood, Florida. It's a really small school.
Yeah, my school is. It's not what it is right now. All I'm gonna say is Paige Buckets is going to be another outstanding UConn product. I can see her being one and done. And you know what? With the Liberty finishing the season the way it did, imagine if Paige finished one and done with UConn. She gets drafted to the Liberty. She and Sabrina Ionescu, I feel, will make a great combo. Because I've seen the highlights. She can pass the ball. She can get inside to score. She can even block shots the way Angel McCauley would block shots.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It would be incredible. I wish the W would allow that. If only we could do one and done on the WNBA side. Hopefully one day. I'm all about college, but let's get these girls into the pros. Come on.
Exactly. Because this will be the best time for Liberty to win the lottery and draft this girl. Because, I want that combo to happen.
Yeah.
She can fill in the shoes that if in case Sabrina Ionescu has another season injury, she can fill in her shoes. Mm-hmm. She can really finish she's way too tall to be shooting guard. To be honest.
Yeah. She's 5'11", 6 foot. She I think is running a true point right now. I think that's the position that Gino's going to have her put in. I'm interested to see actually. Again, one of the greatest coaches ever in any sport in Gino Auriemma. And so I'm excited to see how he takes this great talent to the next level.
Yeah, and I've also seen that you've been to a lot of UConn games, including the one where they paid tribute to Gigi Bryant. Yeah.
It was a beautiful experience in a bittersweet way. What they did was incredible. Gigi always having been a UConn fan and wanting to go there. Still doesn't feel like that was, 8 months ago now, which is right, January, I don't even know what month we're in, 9 months ago, actually. Doesn't feel like that was 9 months ago. They did an incredible job of saluting her, and that team did. So shout out to the UConn team, the UConn school athletic program to, taking that moment to give, the right and just respect to two great legends.
Yeah, exactly. They brought out legends like Maya Moore, Breanna Stewart. When Breanna Stewart was on that team, they won 4 consecutive championships. They've had Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird. You know what? Just Google it. They were so good. When Maya Moore was on the squad, they took out Georgetown. And someone I interviewed not too long ago was on that team. Be mindful and reminded that Maya Moore is the future.
Yeah.
She also reminded about the so-called future that Georgetown is. You know what? Yeah, it's just so much that you can talk about with UConn. And Paige Buckets will be no exception when the season starts.
100%.
But let's get into a little bit about your career up until Slam. What made you decide to be a journalist for the W anyways?
So I had just finished grad school at NYU. I was really, I would say, at a formative point in my career because I didn't know what direction I wanted my career to take. I had done some events internships. While I interned for the Garden with the Liberty and Knicks my first year in New York in 2016. And at that point, we had done some great things, and I loved working with the Liberty team. A lot of them are still with the team, but now under the nets. And I didn't want to do events. And so I took a year away from working and finished up grad school and just kind of interned some spots or freelanced. And the NBA came calling, the WNBA specifically. It was, so the way it works, it's an NBA entertainment. The WNBA is under it, and they came calling, and I was so excited to be a part of such a great team and learn so much. So I did a year with the WNBA team, social team, and then Slam found me through, a mutual connection, and they really wanted someone to take the reins on starting their women's basketball brand, and the rest was kind of history. It's for what made it happen for me in terms of wanting to cover the W is I always wanted to cover women that changed the world. And in my opinion, the women of the WNBA are the ones that change the world more than any others, even if they are not earning the respect they are due from a public's perspective. And I think that's something else I wanted to add to is they weren't earning their respect. And I saw it when I was at the league, from a public perception, from a public view, from a media view. And so when this opportunity came with Slam, I saw it as an opportunity to play a part as a media member, to give the respect to these women that are helping change the world. And so that really always is what inspired me to first get in, and it really is what drives me every day.
And what do you know? That was around like the same calendar year that Ari got into Bleacher Report.
Mm-hmm.
Almost the same way she got into that job, and you guys have killed it. You along with Christina Williams, LaChina Robinson, Monica McNutt, y'all were all together when you covered the WNBA Finals in 2019. What was that experience like for you?
It was interesting. It was my first time covering it from an actual media outlet, as opposed to whether being within the league or work within a team. Like I had always kind of played on that side of the business, and so it was an interesting experience. Honestly, a learning one too. How do you cover from a social platform that may not necessarily be fully like news oriented or like fully journalistic? It's almost more social coverage. So, the learning of what do the fans want to see? What does the audience want to see? How does that pull in new people? And so it was so fun to work alongside Ari, Chloe, LaChina, and see so many different perspectives and people that have been, women that have just been killing the game for so long. And honestly, just so blessed to be in the room along with those incredible women powerhouses in their individual rights. So I really loved just being a part of a network of women in media and sports media covering a league and players that they are just as equally passionate about as I am. So it was really fun. I wish we could have done the same in 2020. Hopefully we will be back all together in person soon.
Yeah, I know. And you'll get to see me on the court when I'm covering the WNBA in person, like I did when I did all those interviews. You can check them out on my Instagram and YouTube channel when you get the chance. And also, so much. I can go on and on about how incredible women in sports is. I know you saw the Hot Clock video that Chloe and Nia Sapp and a couple of the women that work in overtime did earlier, when they talked about Paige buckets, when they talked about the W, when they talked about social justice. They talked about how there's not many women women of color in the coaching side. Like, it's been male dominant. I know you probably saw that video, and if you haven't, you can check that out as well. It's on the Overtime WBB website, Instagram page.
Yeah, it's very true and sad. There are not enough women of color in the league as head coaches. I think right now there are only 4 WNBA head coaches that are women. And if I'm not mistaken, they are all 4 white. So Cheryl Reeve, Sandy Brondello, Nikki Collin, and Minnesota's Megan. Yeah, so yeah, they are all 4 white women. And while we're really excited to see women having the head coaching role, there are women, that are that are women of color that should be in these roles, or at least being considered for these roles as well. And that goes for the NBA too. you know, you speak of a woman that's earned her right. You talk about Becky Hammon as a potential head coach in the future. She's someone that really should be seriously considered in her own league. But the W does really lack that. Since it is a league predominantly made of Black women, and it does need that represented in its head coaching roles.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that the WNBA, I was always told that it hasn't really gotten much media attention. Like, that's probably the reason why after like the early 2010s, I barely followed. I did know who won the championships, but it's like the Liberty, they're barely televised much on TV. Even in their home games, they like, I remember for when I started watching it in like 05, 06, actually 06 season, they were always televising the Liberty games on MSG. Always. They were so consistent with the televised, but now, like just lately, they only do home games or they only do like once a blue moon, which I guess is understandable because they have baseball to put up with and they have other networks on MSG. But right now, I'm getting back into it. That's all I can say. Like, what can you remember the very first WNBA season you ever watched growing up?
I mean, one of the first seasons, I think it was 2010 actually. So I was a junior in high school at that point. Right? Yeah, I was a junior in high school. I actually had just finished being I was a gymnast for my whole life growing up. I was very short. Basketball was not in the cards. My dad played professionally in Puerto Rico, and so I had always been around basketball because of him. And I think my sophomore year of high school was the first year that I really watched and fell in love with just how incredible the women of the league are, and watching Sue and Lauren win their title in 2010. Their second title, excuse me. It was just a really powerful and impactful moment, and you know, it was only of greatness to come. That was Tina Charles's first year in the league, and so many great players kind of beginning their path into the WNBA. And at that point, Maya Moore was still in college, but she was, you know, Maya Moore, and everyone knew who she was at UConn. So that was one of my first years that I really saw and fell in love with what they do at the WNBA.
Yeah, and I already mentioned that my first year was 2006, and that was the year, and that was, well, it was not too long before the Liberty got back into the playoffs in 07. And that I can remember. And it was when they had that epic series with the Detroit Shock, which is now the Dallas Wings. Speaking of Dallas Wings, I know you interviewed Rafique Louison. Like, what are your impressions about her from when she came from her college days up until the W right now?
Yeah, Rafique's incredible. She is a hell of a player. She's going to do some great things, and I think be the face of this league down the line. She's just a pure scorer, and I don't know what else to say when, you know, she's a star in the making. I mean, she's already a star in her own right, but she's going to be the face of this league at some point, and she's going to take that Dallas Wings team to new heights. You know, I know they're in the process of now getting a new head coach, but they have a lot of young people on that team that are going to help them be great.
Yeah, I know. But getting back to like the time working at Slam, I know one of the highlights would have to be working the Slam Summer Classic during the summer of 2019. Like, what was that experience like for you working there or having any involvement with it?
Yeah, it was really awesome. The Slam Summer Classic was, you know, once in a lifetime opportunity that we throw every year at Dykeman, but every year it gets bigger and better somehow. And I mean, thousands of people scaling walls to be there. It's something I've never experienced. It's New York basketball at its finest, honestly. When you talk about that's like ball play, like that's like, you know, park play. It really is what it is. It's one of the most, that energy is just unlike any other. Like I've gone to the Garden, I've been to the big arenas, and I've never experienced what I experienced at Dykeman on, you know, a Sunday night or afternoon watching, you know, high school kids play or whoever it may be playing. But that really is some of the most special moments I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, man. Like, I remember that was like the same year I did it, my first interviews for the players that played at Dykeman Park. The energy over there was just crazy.
Yeah, it really, really was. It was an extremely, a super special moment to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, what advice you have for the upcoming journalists, including the ones that are working through the global pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult time for everyone. And I can't imagine, the things that everyone are going through personally. So I think first, especially during the pandemic, is take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it may be. Make sure to focus on yourself during this time and not get so caught up in the anxieties of getting jobs or all that. Just try and hone in and make sure you're taken care of. And then beyond that is just never say no to anything. Be open to all and any opportunities that come your way, even if it may not be something that you necessarily expected. You never know what that could lead to down the line. So just be really open to anything and everything and take care of yourself.
Hey, it's been over a year since I got my master's degree from Ford University. And ever since then, I've been doing nothing but this platform. And I've also been nothing but that podcast stuff, rather it be like, and also I've been doing nothing but video work and photography work. And that's basically it, just to work our way towards doing it for Slam Magazine, which I'll get into on the side. And for Sports Illustrated, or for anything, any opportunity that comes flying my way, I would like to cover it.
Yeah, 100%. Always got to be open to it all.
Yeah. But before I let you go, I want to ask you, you mentioned you knew about Kobe Bryant passing away. What went through your mind seeing all that happen in the story about how you found out about the guy's passing?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. I actually was in this room. I was with my friend who knows nothing about sports, zero about sports. She just goes, "Oh my God, Kobe Bryant died." I was like, "What?" I remember she said it. I was like, "Don't mess with me like that." They're like, "Come on, you gotta you can't just say that and say that." She's like, "Well, TMZ's reporting." I was like, "Yeah, TMZ gets things wrong all the time. I don't trust none of that." And then, as the day went on and we found out the truth about it all, it was one of the most heartbreaking moments of, I would say, my life in relation to someone I didn't know personally. I had seen him at All-Star in 2019, last summer. And I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm going to introduce myself. And I chickened out. I'll never forget. It's actually one of the things I'll probably regret for the rest of my life, knowing, how everything turned out. But it was such a heart-wrenching moment for everyone, all basketball fans. And for me specifically, I think it was more about Gigi and knowing the future of women's basketball that she held at her hands and that she was excited to take forward. But, their memories and what they did for this game will always live with us. And it's something that we will always take forward or hold with us. Everyone that covers the WNBA, I'm sure, will hold with them moving forward. They're really special people. I wish I had had the opportunity to have some more time in the room and see that chapter of her career. But, they'll always live with us in our memories. And I, all my thoughts and prayers go to the Bryant family and everyone affected by it. I can't imagine how difficult that was for them, seeing how difficult it was for me, a person who didn't even know him personally or her personally. Felt like you did. I feel like everyone felt like they did. So the moment after all of us. Yeah.
I was feeling the exact same way from the year I started watching in 2006 when he had that crazy shot against the Phoenix Suns. And I could not get Kobe Bryant out of my mind when he passed away, which is why I did a 2-part episode, a Kobe Bryant reflection episode, where I interviewed my friend Ryan Walker. He's been on the show a couple of times, and my second oldest cousin, I asked them what are their favorite Kobe Bryant moments of all time. That's why I need to ask you, name one Kobe Bryant moment that stood out to you the most.
It was his last championship. I'll never forget. Actually, there's two. The 2010 championship, that one really stood out to me. One because, was it 2009 championship. I'm actually from Orlando, so I'm a Magic fan. I was on the receiving end of that awful 4-1 series. So I watched us lose. I, at the point, did not like Kobe Bryant very much, being a Magic fan. So I'll never forget that. But the second was actually his last game. I was on a flight from or to New York. I can't remember. I had just moved. It was 2016. I think it was to New York, and I was coming up to
obviously the last game.
Yeah, I was a part of or whatever. But I'm on a plane, and of course, I gotta watch. So I'm watching on a direct TV on a flight, on a tiny screen. And I'm just sitting there like crying. Like everyone on the plane's like the person next to me is like, "Are you okay?" I'm just sitting there crying. But like the craziest part was seeing him build up to dropping 60. That was just like, I was like, it was a moment, and then I was crying. So I'll never forget those two things.
The 60-point career closeout that he dropped against the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorite moments. And I keep on saying this. I also mentioned the game where he hit off Dwayne Wade's Miami Heat in one point, and the crazy dunk he had against the Brooklyn Nets. I was on the receiving end of that. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan and a Knicks fan, so ain't
fair enough.
Also on the receiving end of another one of Kobe Bryant's 60-point games in 09.
Yeah, I always got to be on the receiving end. Many teams are.
Don't worry about it. You're all right. You're not alone when it comes to a Kobe Bryant moment. You're really not alone.
Yeah, I know. Whew. It hurts.
And you know what? This is why I put the 2020 championship win as like my favorite championship win that LeBron James ever done, because you're doing it in honor of Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And we'll conclude this episode. Of Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for stopping by, Camille. And
thank you so much for having me.
You continue to slam it down with W Slam.
Yeah, thank you, and same to you.
And to all the big balls out there, get your head in the game and slam it down.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.